Backfield 3779 asked, I know Henry hasn't been too happy about the recent Brave controversy, but I'd like to hear more about your thoughts on the matter and whether it has affected the way you view Brave as a company or raised new concerns about recommending it. And they linked
Yeah.
to a forum post about the Brave browser promotion for $100 off the Unplugged phone, which I think was on their like they
Yep.
advertised on their new tab page. I don't remember exactly. You
Yeah.
might know more about that though.
Yeah, I can give context. So it's called Unplugged, right? Because I'm not even.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there was a phone company called Unplugged. Some of you might have heard of it, and we can definitely touch on that a little bit more. And I'm really curious for Jonah's thoughts. But from what I can tell, Unplugged doesn't really offer anything that unique to the table in terms of like a secure phone. It has actually a lot of outdated firmware that isn't really kept up to date anymore. So on the firmware side of things, you're kind of behind on security updates. And then it has its own little OS that it runs that actually takes some code from other projects that we recommend, like Divest. And I think Divest has this antivirus that's built into Android, and they pretty much just took the code from that and they broke the license in some capacity, is what people are saying, to put that in there. But ultimately, none of that really matters. I think the point is it doesn't really do anything that you can't get from other free options. And it's very expensive. And I know a lot of people have issues with like the CEO and whatnot. So I'm not even saying it's a bad product. It's just kind of an unnecessary product in an already saturated space that has a lot of good options as is right now. Um, and then Brave, what they did, which I guess is the controversy, is they did a promotion with them to give, and they pretty much said it like Brave users get $100 off this phone for Black Friday. And they are doing that because the phone comes with Brave out of the box, I believe. It's not a huge controversy. It's not like it's not the end of the world. It's nothing that really I think makes Brave any less trustworthy in the privacy and security side of things. I just really think that it makes me lose trust in Brave and like what they suggest to users and what they do because and I talked about this a lot on the forum. Not a lot, actually. I just left a quick comment, which is I kind of lose a little bit of trust in Brave over this. And then someone kind of was like, well, why? And I touched on why, which is this is not a trustworthy company by default. If Brave partners with the Tor project, Brave doesn't need to do a whole blog post explaining why they partnered with the Tor project. They can, and I think that's good, but it's kind of a given because Tor is already an established safe person in the industry. This phone company is not. There's actually a lot of questions around them. There have been questions around them. So when Brave does a promotion with this, whether or not they mean to, they're still promoting the company and they're promoting the use of the phone. And them not accompanying that promotion with their reasoning for why they liked the phone, which they didn't really do, I think is where they went wrong. I think all they needed to do was give a little bit more context as to why they chose that specific phone to promote with, and why they think it's a good recommendation, where they think it's good, where they think there's advantages, and where they think there are disadvantages, ideally. So I think they just weren't public enough about why. And I think if they answered those questions, then even if it's not a good thing to do, as a community, we're better equipped to like say, oh, they said this, but actually this is true. Um, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and along those lines, I also feel that Brave themselves are not in like an inherently trustworthy company that when it comes to privacy and security, for example. In my mind, I kind of bucket Brave into the same group of companies, like Apple, for example, where they make a lot of decisions that are privacy respecting, and that is a big part of their branding, for example. But I don't think that like privacy is their primary motivator behind developing their product. Like Brave pretty explicitly is in like the cryptocurrency space, and they believe that that's how they can monetize their product and make a browser that isn't reliant on search engine income like Google Chrome, for example. And that's all great. And if you want to use Brave, I think that they've made a lot of good decisions so far, and I think that it's a good browser. But they're also the kind of company where you have to examine all of the things that they're doing critically, and you have to say that like not every single thing that they're doing is solely for the benefit of the user's privacy. They make decisions for other reasons as well, and that's different from someone like the Tor project, for example, which is a nonprofit that is like explicitly only focused on improving anonymity, and they have been doing that for years. And so like when they say something, or if Tor Project makes a claim that has a lot more credibility just based on their authority alone than like Brave would, for example. So while like I don't really have much against Brave as a browser right now, it's something that like I would just always keep an eye on them, and I don't think that them partnering with anyone or saying that they like a phone, for example, really gives that other product any weight in my mind, because I don't think that that's something that Brave is credible at, basically.
Yeah. There's a question though, because I think for people who maybe people who follow our communities and other communities who I guess because I use Brave and I still like Brave as a browser. It works
Hmm.
very well for me and it's still good. But I think a lot of people know that a lot of people might know that the company and the browser have different reputations. And I think a lot of people don't know that. I think a lot of people who might
Yeah.
just start using Brave and they're like, wow, this browser is awesome. This is what privacy means. This is what privacy is. This is their only exposure to privacy. And if they come forward and say, oh, hey, go buy this phone for $100 off, I think that I don't see why some people wouldn't hop on that. So I think that's kind of my concern is that I agree with you. There are a lot of people who kind of know how to distinguish like marketing from reality, from the company, from the product. But I don't think that's what everybody is doing. So that's kind of my
No.
concern and why I wish there was more responsibility that they took and how they went about it.
Yeah, I mean that is a huge concern. And I think it's a big problem in the privacy community. I think that people really want the people who are making private products to be like the most top tier ethical and morally straight like company and people to be working on these projects. They want pretty much everyone to be like Tor Project, for example, or like Signal, where they're just like laser focused on a single thing, and that isn't the case. And I think that like even just beyond Brave, it leads people to ignore perfectly valid solutions to like their specific problems just because they don't like the company behind it. Like I think a lot of people, I mean, this is an example we use a lot. I think a lot of people would be better served using an iPhone than like a stock Android device in most cases. I think that is a pretty reasonable statement to make for the vast majority of people out there. And people don't like that because they don't like Apple, the company, and they focus on that rather than focus on like the pros and cons of the product itself. And I think that having that separation and maybe looking at products more objectively opens up the field to more like potential solutions, and it prevents you from being like overly attached to certain brands like Apple or Brave or whatever, because you just have to be cautious with like with any company, and you can't take everything that you do for granted. You can only evaluate these companies based on like the work that they're actually outputting, which is, I mean, especially with Apple, very hit or miss. But even with companies like Brave, Brave has reputational issues pretty frequently. I see people post about them on the forum, and ultimately, it doesn't really affect their browser. It hasn't so far, but I wouldn't see the company themselves as like inherently trustworthy by any means.
Yeah. You just watched a clip from the Techlore Clips channel, which is taken from our main channel, Techlore, where we talk about digital rights, privacy, security, and so much more about tech to give you a better relationship with the technology you use. Check out the main channel over here, and also check out maybe another suggested video to learn more.